President Trump dismissing the interest now in the Epstein case.
I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff.
And distancing himself from the convicted sex offender, as the president's been doing for years.
I had a falling out with him a long time ago.
In the Oval Office in 2019, making clear his feelings on Epstein at that point.
I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan.
There's no evidence the president is connected to any of Epstein's crimes. We do know the two did have a relationship. The president acknowledging both men crossed paths in Palm Beach back in the 90s. NBC News archival video from 1992 shows the president with Epstein at a Mar-a-Lago party alongside cheerleaders for the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. Mr. Trump greeting guests, including Epstein.
Come on in. Go inside.
The two chatting and gesturing to those in front of them. At one point, it appears Mr. Trump leans over and tells Epstein she's hot.
Hello and welcome, guys. Adam is here, so this is happening right now. The unredacted Epstein files reveal that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet at least 8 times between 1993 and 1996, far more than previously known, and Ghislaine Maxwell was aboard for several of those flights. This contradicts Trump's claim of a casual acquaintance and exposes a pattern he has been lying about for decades.
U.S. President Donald Trump was mentioned in a new batch of Epstein files released Tuesday by the Justice Department. Among them was a New York prosecutor's email saying that Trump flew on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's private jet, quote, many more times than previously has been reported. It said he had flown on the plane 8 times in the 1990s. In a social media post in 2024, Trump said he was never on Epstein's plane or at his stupid island. Among the 8 flights were 4 where Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell was aboard. She is serving a 20-year sentence for helping Epstein sexually abuse underage girls. On one flight, the only 3 passengers were Epstein, Trump, and a 20-year-old woman whose name was redacted. The prosecutor's email said that, quote, on 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers, respectively, were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. There was no allegation in the prosecutor's email that Trump had committed any crime, and the White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the email. There have been no criminal allegations against Trump in the disclosures of the Justice Department's files on Epstein.
But the flight logs are just the beginning. The files also reveal that Trump was privately briefed months ago that his name appears repeatedly throughout the Epstein investigation materials. He knew. He knew his name was in there. He knew there were allegations, witness statements, documents connecting him to Epstein. And what did he do with that knowledge? He did not come clean. He did not get ahead of the story. Instead, he tried to bury it. He resisted releasing the files. He slow-walked document production. He claimed national security concerns and grand jury secrecy. He threw up every procedural roadblock he could find, and he only backed down when Congress forced his hand with a law he could not veto. That law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, passed through Congress like a freight train. The House voted 427-1. The Senate was unanimous. Trump had no choice but to sign it, and he tried to spin the signing as if he had been in favor of transparency all along.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has made a plea for Americans to move on from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Trump had spent months trying to block the disclosure of millions of files linked to the late sex offender Epstein before relenting late last year. He now says the latest release of documents and photos has cleared him of any wrongdoing.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else, really. Now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people.
But the reporting tells a very different story. Behind the scenes, Trump and his Justice Department fought release every step of the way. They were terrified of what the files would reveal. And now we know why. Because every batch of documents that comes out has Trump's name scattered throughout like landmines in a field. And then there is the pardon situation. This is the part of the story that should make every American's blood run cold. Trump publicly talked about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell. Not once, multiple times. He told reporters that he was allowed to pardon her, that it was in the news, that he was legally permitted to do it. When asked if he would actually do it, he did not say no. He said no one had asked him to, which is not a denial. It is a door left deliberately open.
For a second day, the number 2 official at the Justice Department meeting with Jeffrey Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell.
As Fox's Connor Hansen tells us, the meeting comes as Congress and the public, including supporters of the president, are demanding more answers about the investigation.
Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney returned for a second day of talks with his client and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. He says Maxwell answered questions on everything and everyone Blanche asked about.
Maybe about 100 different people. She answered questions about everybody, and she didn't hold anything back.
Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence for child sex trafficking and other crimes from her time alongside Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump was asked if Maxwell could receive a pardon or commutation.
It's something I haven't thought about. It's really something. I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
The sitting president of the United States openly floated the idea of pardoning a convicted sex trafficker, the woman who helped Jeffrey Epstein abuse underage girls. And he did this while simultaneously fighting to keep the Epstein files secret. You do not have to be a legal scholar to understand how damning this looks. Trump was publicly signaling to Maxwell that he might save her. He was dangling a pardon in front of the one person who knows more about Epstein's operation than almost anyone alive. Why would he do that? Why would he even mention it? The only logical explanation is that Trump was worried about what Maxwell might say. He was worried about her cooperating with investigators. He was worried about her writing a memoir. He was worried about her flipping on him. And dangling a pardon is how you keep someone quiet. It is how you buy loyalty. It is how mob bosses operate. The juxtaposition is stunning. On one hand, Trump resisted releasing the Epstein files for months. On the other hand, he talked openly about pardoning Epstein's co-conspirator. Put those two facts together, and what do you get? You get a president who wanted to keep damaging information hidden while simultaneously protecting the person who could provide the most damaging testimony. That is not governing. That is obstruction. That is conspiracy. That is potentially criminal. And now the files are out anyway. Congress forced release. The law was signed. Batch after batch of documents is being made public, and every new release seems designed to make Trump look worse. Internal Justice Department emails show federal prosecutors flagging Trump's flights on Epstein's jet. Documents show Trump was briefed about his appearance in the files. Witness statements describe Trump's relationship with Epstein in ways that contradict everything Trump has told the public. Flight logs place Trump and Maxwell together on Epstein's plane. It is all coming out, and Trump cannot stop it. The political calculation that Trump thought he was making has backfired spectacularly. He positioned himself as the transparency candidate, the guy who would expose the Clintons and other powerful Democrats as the real Epstein associates. He promised that the files would vindicate him and destroy his enemies. He created expectations that the Epstein files would be a political weapon aimed at the left. But the files are not damaging Democrats. They are damaging Trump. His name keeps showing up. His flights keep being documented. His pardon comments keep being cited. The narrative he tried to build has collapsed, and he is trapped in the rubble. Think about the psychological toll this is taking on Trump. He is a man who craves control, who needs to shape every story, who cannot tolerate being seen as weak or compromised. And now he is watching helplessly as document after document emerges, each one adding another thread to a rope that is slowly tightening around his neck. He cannot tweet his way out of this. He cannot bully the judges. He cannot fire the investigators. The law is the law, and the law says the files must be released. So Trump sits in his Florida residence, scrolling through headlines, waiting for the next batch, dreading what it might contain. The survivors of Epstein's abuse have been speaking out, and their voices add a moral dimension to this story that transcends politics. They stood outside the Capitol and told their stories. They described the impact of Epstein's crimes on their lives. They demanded accountability, not just for Epstein and Maxwell, but for everyone who enabled them, everyone who looked the other way, everyone who flew on that plane and pretended not to know what was happening. Their testimony is gut-wrenching. And it makes Trump's behavior, his resistance to transparency, his pardon comments, his downplaying of his relationship with Epstein, all of it looks not just politically stupid but morally repugnant. The timeline of Trump's flip-flop on file releases is damning in its own right. For months, he claimed that releasing the Epstein files would be great. He said it would expose the truth. He said he had nothing to hide. But behind closed doors, his Justice Department was doing everything possible to delay, to redact, to withhold. They claimed documents were classified. They claimed grand jury secrecy protected materials. They claimed witness privacy concerns. Every excuse in the book. And it was only after weeks of bipartisan backlash, after Republican and Democrats in Congress united to demand transparency, after new revelations about Epstein claiming he could take down Trump, that Trump suddenly reversed course. He signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and pretended he had been in favor of it all along. But the public is not stupid. Everyone paying attention saw what happened. Trump fought release. He lost. And now he is trying to take credit for a transparency he actively opposed. That is classic Trump. But it is also a sign of consciousness of guilt. If he really had nothing to hide, he would have released everything on day one. He would have welcomed scrutiny. He would have welcomed the chance to clear his name. Instead, he fought. And the fact that he fought tells you everything you need to know about what he was trying to protect. Let me take you deeper into what the Epstein files actually contain, because understanding the specifics is the only way to grasp why Trump is genuinely terrified right now. This is not abstract. This is not speculation. These are documents with names, dates, locations, and statements that are painting a picture Trump has spent years trying to erase. The flight logs alone are devastating. We have known for years that Trump flew on Epstein's private jet, a Boeing 727 that Epstein nicknamed the Lolita Express, a name that should tell you everything about what was happening on that plane. But the conventional wisdom was that Trump flew on the jet once, maybe twice. The files now show at least 8 flights between 1993 and 1996. That is a significant relationship. That is someone who was a regular passenger on the plane of a man who was trafficking children. And on several of those flights, Ghislaine Maxwell was present. The same Ghislaine Maxwell who was convicted of recruiting and grooming underage girls for Epstein, the same Ghislaine Maxwell that Trump publicly talked about pardoning. Now let me be very careful about what I am saying. Flying on Epstein's jet does not mean Trump participated in Epstein's crimes. There is no document in these files that directly proves Trump abused anyone. But that is not the standard for political damage. The standard is whether the American people believe Trump was closer to Epstein than he admitted, whether they believe he knew more than he said, whether they believe he has been dishonest about the nature of their relationship. And on all of those questions, the files are devastating. 8 flights is not nothing. 8 flights is a pattern. 8 flights is proof that Trump was deep inside Epstein's world. Then there are the internal Justice Department emails. These documents show that federal prosecutors were flagging Trump's connections to Epstein internally. They were noting that Trump's name kept coming up. They were discussing how to handle the political sensitivity of investigating a sitting president's ties to a convicted sex offender. These emails are not public in their entirety yet, but the portions that have been released show that the Justice Department knew Trump had a problem. They knew the Epstein investigation touched on Trump in ways that could be explosive, and they were trying to manage it quietly, to control the narrative, to prevent exactly the kind of document dump that is now happening. Trump was briefed on all of this. The files show that Trump received briefings about his appearance in the Epstein materials months before the public release. He knew his name was in there. He knew there were allegations, some of them serious, some of them from dubious sources, but all of them potentially damaging. And instead of getting ahead of the story, instead of releasing everything and letting the public decide, Trump tried to bury it. He tried to keep the files secret. He tried to protect himself from whatever was in those documents. The pardon comments take on a whole new meaning when viewed through this lens. Trump was not just randomly talking about pardoning Maxwell. He was doing it at the exact time he was fighting to keep the Epstein files secret. The timing is everything. In the same period when Trump's Justice Department was slow-walking document production, when they were claiming national security concerns and grand jury secrecy, Trump was publicly saying he could pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. He was telling the world that he had the power to set her free. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. Think about it from Maxwell's perspective. She is sitting in prison, convicted of horrific crimes, facing decades behind bars. She knows things. She knows about Epstein's operation. She knows about the powerful people who flew on that plane. She knows about the parties, the islands, the apartments. She knows who did what and when. And then the President of the United States starts talking about pardoning her. He says he is allowed to do it. He says it is legally permitted. He does not rule it out. What message does that send to Maxwell? It sends the message that if she stays quiet, if she does not cooperate with investigators, if she does not write that book or give that interview, there might be a reward at the end. There might be a pardon. There might be freedom. That is corrupt. That is an abuse of the pardon power. The pardon power exists to correct miscarriages of justice, to show mercy in appropriate cases, to heal the nation after conflicts. It does not exist to protect co-conspirators. It does not exist to buy silence. It does not exist to obstruct justice. And if Trump was using the pardon power for any of those purposes, he has committed an impeachable offense. He has potentially committed a crime. We do not yet have a smoking gun. We do not have a recording of Trump saying to Maxwell, "I will pardon you if you stay quiet." But we have his public statements. We have his resistance to file releases. We have the timing. We have the pattern. And Congress is investigating. Legal experts are already saying that Trump's comments about pardoning Maxwell, combined with his efforts to suppress the Epstein files, could form the basis for obstruction of justice charges. The House Judiciary Committee is gathering documents. Witnesses are being interviewed. The investigation is moving forward, and Trump knows it. The political damage is already severe and getting worse. Every time a new batch of Epstein files is released, it generates headlines. Every headline reminds voters of Trump's connection to Epstein. Every reminder erodes Trump's support. Polls are already showing that a majority of Americans believe Trump is hiding something about his relationship with Epstein. A majority believe he has not been honest about what he knew and when he knew it. A majority believe the pardon comments were inappropriate at best and corrupt at worst. These are not partisan opinions. These are broad-based judgments from across the political spectrum. And Trump's base, the 30% of voters who have stuck with him through everything, even they are starting to waver. Not because they suddenly believe Trump participated in Epstein's crimes, but because they are tired of the scandal. They are tired of defending him. They are tired of answering questions from their friends and family about why Trump flew on a sex trafficker's plane 8 times. The Epstein scandal is exhausting even Trump's most loyal supporters. It is a constant drain on political energy that could be spent on other issues. The legal exposure is real and growing. Obstruction of justice is a crime. Using the pardon power corruptly is a crime. Conspiracy to obstruct justice is a crime. And the Epstein files are providing evidence that could support all of these charges. The flight logs show the relationship. The internal DOJ emails show the cover-up. The pardon comments show the intent. Put it all together and you have a compelling case that Trump was trying to protect himself and his associates from accountability for their connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Trump's defense strategy has been predictable but ineffective. He says he barely knew Epstein. He says they had a falling out years before Epstein's crimes became public. He says the files are full of unverified hearsay. He says the whole thing is a witch hunt. But the files keep contradicting him. 8 flights is not barely knowing someone. Falling out or not, the flights happened in the 1990s when Epstein was already engaging in the behavior that would eventually send Maxwell to prison. And the files are not just hearsay. They are flight logs, emails, witness statements, documents that have been authenticated and verified. The grand jury records that are also being released add another layer of trouble for Trump. Grand jury proceedings are secret by default, but Congress has approved disclosure of certain Epstein-related grand jury materials. Those materials include testimony from witnesses who spoke under oath. They include evidence that was presented to grand juries in multiple jurisdictions. They include information that has never been public before. And every time a grand jury record is released, it is a potential landmine for Trump. We do not know exactly what is in those records. Neither does Trump. That is what makes him so terrified. He is waiting for the other shoe to drop, and he does not know when it will fall or how hard it will hit. The connection to Trump's other legal troubles makes everything worse. He is already facing classified documents charges. He is already under investigation for January 6th. He is already dealing with civil lawsuits and criminal referrals and congressional investigations. The Epstein scandal is just one more front in a multi-front war. But it is a particularly damaging front because it goes to character, not just policy. It goes to who Trump is as a person, not just what he did as president. And character matters to voters. It matters to jurors. It matters to history. The survivors of Epstein's abuse have become powerful voices in this debate. They have stood up in public, many of them for the first time, to tell their stories. They have described the grooming, the abuse, the manipulation. They have named names. They have demanded accountability. And they have pointed out that powerful men like Trump, men who flew on Epstein's plane, men who were friends with Epstein, men who partied at his homes, those men have a responsibility to come forward and tell what they know. Instead, Trump has resisted, deflected, and denied. That refusal to cooperate, that instinct to hide and protect himself, it speaks volumes. Congress is not letting this go. Bipartisan majorities in both the House and the Senate have made clear that they want full transparency. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was just the beginning. There are now efforts to expand the law, to require release of even more materials, to impose criminal penalties on anyone who willfully withholds documents. The political momentum is all toward more disclosure, not less. And every disclosure adds to Trump's nightmare. The media coverage has been relentless. Every network, every newspaper, every online outlet is covering the Epstein files. It is the story that will not die. And because the files are being released in batches over time, it is a story that keeps coming back. Just when Trump thinks the headlines might move on, another batch drops and he is right back in the center of the storm. He cannot escape it. He cannot outrun it. He can only watch as his name appears again and again in documents that the whole world is reading. The question that everyone is asking now is simple. What happens next? Where does this go from here? And the answer should terrify Donald Trump more than anything else he has faced in his entire political career. Because this is not a scandal that burns out. This is not a story that fades away. This is a slow-motion avalanche that is going to keep rolling, keep growing, keep crushing everything in its path until there is nothing left. Let me walk you through the immediate future. More Epstein files are scheduled for release. The Epstein Files Transparency Act mandated a rolling disclosure, which means new batches of documents will keep coming at regular intervals. And beyond that, Congress is already talking about expanding the law to require release of even more materials. Grand jury records that were initially withheld are now being approved for disclosure. Witness interviews that were previously deemed too sensitive are being reviewed for public release. The pipeline of damaging information is not drying up. It is expanding. Trump's legal team is in crisis mode. They have been reviewing the released documents, trying to get ahead of what is coming, trying to prepare defenses for every new allegation. But they are fighting an uphill battle because they do not know what is in the unreleased materials. No one does, except the Justice Department officials who have seen the full files. And those officials are not talking. Trump's lawyers are essentially flying blind, waiting for each new document dump, reacting to whatever emerges, unable to plan more than a few weeks ahead. That is no way to defend a president. That is a recipe for disaster. The pardon issue is not going away. If anything, it is getting worse. Congressional investigators are now looking into whether Trump or his associates had any direct or indirect communications with Maxwell or her legal team about a pardon. They are subpoenaing phone records, email logs, visitor logs. They are interviewing witnesses who might have knowledge of any pardon discussions, and if they find evidence that Trump offered or hinted at a pardon in exchange for Maxwell's silence, that is game over. That is obstruction of justice. That is an impeachable offense. That is potentially criminal. Legal experts have been weighing in, and their consensus is sobering. The pardon power is broad, but it is not absolute. Presidents cannot use pardons to obstruct justice. They cannot offer pardons to buy silence or false testimony. They cannot engage in what the law calls a corrupt bargain. And Trump's public statements about being allowed to pardon Maxwell, combined with his resistance to releasing the Epstein files, create strong circumstantial evidence of such a corrupt bargain. It is not definitive proof, not yet, but it is enough to justify a full investigation. And that investigation is happening. The political calculus for Republicans in Congress has shifted dramatically. For months, they stuck with Trump, defended him, voted against impeachment efforts. But the Epstein files are changing minds. Republican voters are starting to ask hard questions. Republican donors are getting nervous. Republican strategists are warning that the Epstein scandal could cost the party not just the presidency, but the House and the Senate as well. And when political survival is on the line, loyalty to Trump starts to look like a luxury that no one can afford. There are already whispers that some Senate Republicans are ready to break with Trump if the evidence becomes overwhelming. They are watching the document releases. They are tracking the pardon investigation. They are calculating the odds that Trump can survive this. And the odds do not look good. If a few more damaging batches of files come out, if evidence of a corrupt pardon bargain emerges, the dam could break. Republican senators who have been defending Trump for years could announce that they have seen enough, that they cannot defend the indefensible, that they will vote to convict if the House impeaches. Trump's public behavior reveals his state of mind. He is lashing out on social media, attacking everyone, calling the document releases a witch hunt, claiming the files are fake, insisting that he has done nothing wrong. But the more he attacks, the more desperate he looks. The more he denies, the more people suspect he is hiding something. The more he claims the files are meaningless, the more people wonder why he fought so hard to keep them secret. His strategy is backfiring. Every tweet, every statement, every outburst makes him look guiltier. The media coverage has shifted in a way that is particularly dangerous for Trump. Early in the scandal, many outlets were cautious, waiting for verification, not wanting to jump to conclusions. But now the documents are public. The evidence is there for everyone to see. And journalists are no longer being cautious. They are reporting what is in the files, plain and simple. They are showing the flight logs. They are quoting the emails. They are playing the clips of Trump talking about pardoning Maxwell. There is no spin. There is no interpretation. There is just the facts. And the facts are devastating. The international dimension adds another layer of complication. Epstein had connections around the world. His network included British royalty, foreign politicians, international businessmen. The files contain information about those connections too, and foreign governments are paying close attention. Some are opening their own investigations. Some are demanding that their citizens who appear in the files be held accountable. This is not just an American scandal anymore. It is a global scandal, and Trump is caught in the middle of it. The survivors continue to speak out, and their voices are powerful. They are not politicians. They are not partisans. They are victims who have suffered greatly. And when they talk about the men who enabled Epstein, the men who flew on his plane, the men who looked the other way, their words carry moral weight that no political spin can counter. They have called out Trump by name. They have demanded that he answer for his relationship with Epstein. They have said, publicly and repeatedly, that they do not believe Trump's denials. Their testimony is gutting Trump's credibility. The legal exposure for Trump goes beyond the pardon issue. Obstruction of justice is a crime. Conspiracy to obstruct justice is a crime. Making false statements to federal investigators is a crime. And the Epstein files contain evidence that could support all of these charges. If Trump knowingly made false statements about his relationship with Epstein, if he encouraged others to lie, if he tried to hide or destroy evidence, he could be prosecuted. And unlike a sitting president, a former president has no immunity from criminal prosecution. Trump could face charges the moment he leaves office. The asset seizure question is also relevant. If Trump is convicted of crimes related to the Epstein cover-up, his assets could be forfeited. His properties, his bank accounts, his businesses, all of it could be taken. The government has already shown a willingness to go after Trump's finances in other cases. The Epstein case would be no different, and the amounts at stake are enormous. Trump's entire fortune could be at risk. That is not just a legal problem. That is an existential threat to everything he has built. The comparison to other presidential scandals is instructive. Watergate took 2 years to fully unfold. Iran-Contra took years of investigations. Clinton's impeachment dragged on for months. But the Epstein scandal is moving at breakneck speed. The files are being released in rapid succession. The investigations are happening in real time. The political consequences are immediate. This is not a scandal that will stretch out for years. This is a scandal that could bring down a presidency in weeks or months. The pace is relentless, and Trump cannot slow it down. What should you be watching for in the coming days and weeks? First, watch for the next batch of Epstein files. Each new release is a potential game changer. Second, watch for any news about the pardon investigation. If Congress finds evidence of a corrupt bargain, everything changes. Third, watch for Republican defections. If key senators start distancing themselves from Trump, the end is near. Fourth, watch Trump's own behavior. The more erratic he becomes, the more desperate he is. Fifth, watch the polls. If Trump's approval ratings continue to drop, Republicans will abandon him. The survivors have earned the right to be heard. They have suffered in silence for years. Decades in some cases. They have been ignored, disbelieved, attacked. And now, finally, the truth is coming out. The files are being released. The names are being named. The powerful men who protected Epstein are being exposed. For the survivors, this is not about politics. It is about justice. It is about accountability. It is about making sure that what happened to them never happens to anyone else. Their courage in speaking out has made this moment possible. They deserve our gratitude and our support. Trump's legacy is being written in real time, and it is not the legacy he wanted. He wanted to be remembered as a great president, a transformative figure, a man who reshaped American politics. Instead, he is being remembered as the president who flew on a sex trafficker's plane, who talked about pardoning a convicted co-conspirator, who fought to keep damaging files secret. That legacy is already set. No amount of spin can change it. No amount of denial can erase it. The files are public. The evidence is clear, and history will judge Trump accordingly. The final chapter of this story has not been written yet. More revelations are coming. More investigations are underway. More consequences are on the horizon. But one thing is already certain. The Epstein files have fundamentally changed the political landscape. They have exposed Trump's connections to one of the most notorious criminals of the modern era. They have raised questions that Trump cannot answer and cannot escape. They have created a scandal that will not fade away. And for Donald Trump, that is the worst possible outcome. He is trapped, cornered, terrified, and the walls are closing in with every new document release.